welcome to New Media, The Bleeding Edge. This is going to be our debut show, so I'll ask you to forgive any explosions or fatalities that might occur during this taping. I'm here with my friend Jean Park, who's the community manager for Civil Beat. Jean has 11 years, right, of professional journalism
About 10
experience?
years, yeah. I guess 11 years now.
Okay, I didn't mean to make you older. All right. So currently with Civil Beat, he's also written for the Huffington Post, the Star Bulletin, the Star Advertiser, Orange County Register. Am I forgetting any?
San Gabriel Valley Tribune, Pacific Daily News on Guam.
Okay, great. And then also for magazines like the...
A couple magazines here and there, yeah.
All right, great. So thank you for joining us, Jean.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And my co-host, Ying, who is also my coworker, and I have the privilege of working with her every day. So after graduating from Oxford with a degree in economics and politics, went on to work for companies like, and I'll make sure I don't leave any of these out. She has written for Business Week and has worked at News Corp, the New York Times, and Yahoo, where she was the assistant managing editor for Yahoo Finance. So thank you very much for joining me as well.
My pleasure.
And my name is Daniel Luke. I am the mascot for Akezo, which is a local design and development firm, and also the co-founder of a spin-out, Contix, which is a social media news for finance firm. So we look at about 500 million posts per day and figure out which ones are likely to be moving the valuation of financial assets. So thank you for joining us. We're going to start out with the news segment. I'm going to kick it over to Zhe to get that started. We'll cover news on a global and national level, and then have a quick blurb on some local social media news, and then we'll kick into our discussion about the intersection of news and social media. Zhe?
Hi, everybody. Well, consuming social media never really makes me feel like I'm using my time all that well. So, when I consume news on social media, I feel like, well, this is great. I feel more virtuous. But actually, we've just been outed because the Pew Research Center has a little interesting nugget. They found that almost 80% of people on Facebook who encounter news, they encounter it incidentally. So it's kind of like, hey, you got on Facebook to check out the news about your friends and post your photos and check out the latest cat videos, and oops, you read some news. Well, but news organizations will take what they can get. News consumption is news consumption, incidental or not, right? So, but Facebook has actually made it, easier and faster to consume news. They've made a change in the algorithm this week, so that anytime your friends comment on really hot trending topics, that shows up much faster in your feed rather than a week later when you really don't care. I think they were sort of stung by the criticism that during the Ferguson riots about police violence, it was all over Twitter and not so much on Facebook. So I think they were trying to sort of correct that, but in some cases. This is great, like you want to know exactly what's going on right when it's hot, etc. But then, in other times, companies have also perfected the art of burying the news on social media. Now, how do you bury the news on social media? Sometimes you want to release stuff that you kind of have to release, but it's kind of unpleasant. Well, you can take a cue from these companies. So recently, Silicon Valley tech companies have been releasing their diversity reports. It's been uniformly ugly, to say the least. So, companies have been learning that when they release these reports, they want to bury it as much as possible. So for Twitter, they chose the wonderful time of 1 minute before the Facebook earnings release to release their diversity report. So that absolutely got no mentions. So that's a wonderful way if you want to bury the news. Lately, Groupon did one better. They released their diversity report during the day of the Alibaba IPO launch. So, of course, that got absolutely no mentions whatsoever. So, these are things you can consider. There are plenty of times where you want your posts on social media to get as much attention as possible. And then there are times where that really isn't the case. So, well, that's a little roundup for right now. And back to Dan.
All right. In terms of local social media news, Kanu Hawaii, which is a well-known social network and really both an online community and offline community of people that are working for a more sustainable Hawaii, has an opening for the executive director position. So if you're interested in that, it's kanuhawaii.org. Also, they will later this month be releasing a new Onopono initiative, which is going to introduce labeling for sustainable seafood, which is a harder problem than you might at first think. So look for that on kanuhawaii.org. All right, so we're going to jump into the discussion with Gene here.
All right.
So Gene, tell us what you're the community director for Civil Beat.
Community manager.
Community manager. I'm sorry. Can you tell us what does that mean? What do you do when you go into work in the morning?
What I do is I check comments. One of the founding principles about Civil Beat is that it was supposed to be a place for civic discourse, the civic square online for Hawaii. So every morning I wake up and I check what comments have come in the morning for the stories, where the conversation is going. Sometimes I might lead in with a question to kind of direct the conversation, and trying to make sure that the people aren't tearing each other apart, that comments are staying on topic. Early in the morning, right before I go to bed, I would schedule social media posts to be posted throughout the morning, when I'm still asleep. But I know that these are peak times in Hawaii, especially where people like to get up in Hawaii. People like to get up real early, go to work, get that morning run in, do dawn patrol by the beach. So I know that there are certain times where a lot of people might be paying attention. So I try to schedule in the morning too. And I try to make sure that what's kind of what people are really talking about, where certain stories can be placed. I might read a story a second time and try to see like how I can repackage that story to be resold on social media.
What do you do when, I know Civil Beat is the place for civil discourse, but obviously not everybody follows that rule.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you have rude comments or just really, objectionable ones?
Well, of course I could ban people, but the banning people has been very rare at Civil Beat, and I think that it really comes from just having that staff presence there that really keeps the people in line. I think people know that okay, we do have staff here, so we should try to be a little bit more civil. I think as soon as I step in, the comments, the climate of the comments start to change.
The adults in the room.
Yeah, the adults in the room. Yeah, if the reporters are there, then they might start to address the reporter. So that's something you don't really see a lot in local news here.
Sure.
It's something that Civil Beat started 4 years ago, and it's something that we strive to uphold today.
And do you think the fact that you see real names there, where on a lot of the other news sites you see Gecko 808 or people that are anonymous, that tends to bring out a lot more civility when someone knows that their auntie can read what they wrote on Civil Beat?
Yeah, exactly. I used to moderate the comments for Star Advertisers, so I would see a lot of the same old names coming up.
Right.
There's one called Alice that everybody always attacks, and that this Alice person is also attacking other people. Nobody knows if it's actually he or she or who it is.
Right.
So there's no accountability, and there's no one really stepping in to talk to people about that. So that's why we adhere to Facebook comments, because at least Facebook's naming policy shows that it tries to uphold non-anonymity as much as possible.
Right.
Of course, some people will leak through, but we can't do background checks on everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you just kind of use your best efforts.
Yeah.
And when you switch to Facebook comments, that Facebook was really helping to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
For you.
Yeah.
That's great. So I guess that's a good segue into how do you use Facebook and Twitter and sort of the larger social media channels to help maximize the amount of engagement that you get with your stories, your articles?
It's like Ziggy said, a lot of people fall into news. They find it incidentally, right? So a lot of people they tend to be attracted to stories that are either clickbaity or whatever, but that's being downplayed on Facebook, right?
Sure.
With the algorithm change a couple months ago. But there's always an emotional connection that you can have with your readers. So sometimes I would even change headlines to kind of reflect that. There was one story that we had where the headline was called "History is present in Hawaii's classrooms no matter where you are." So what does that actually mean, right? And you read the author's piece, and it was actually about how this notion of white flight or classism is dictating like public school and private school signups, right? So instead, I changed the headline to opinion stopping white flights from public schools. And that got a lot of attention, and that was actually our most read story throughout the election month. So on a busy news month, that became our top story, and that's because it kind of connected with the reader's sense of what they knew from their public school experience. You know, was there white flight? I never heard about it, or oh yeah, I totally heard about it. So it's kind of like affirming or challenging reader perception, to be able to connect with them in that way, so they can comment on it, they can engage it, they can share it with their family and friends and say like, hey, this is what I was talking about, or this piece is total crap. You know?
Okay, great. So this question I think is really interested in both of your takes on this. Do you think that the way that social media is utilized and the sort of culture of social media in Hawaii differs substantially from the work that you guys have worked in New York and California and a lot of other markets? Do you think there's a big difference, or is behavior fairly consistent across those areas in the social media sphere?
Well, I mean, I think certainly in the New York market, the volume is just so much higher, and so the intensity and the speed at which the conversations happen is so much faster. So certainly at the news organizations that I worked at, like the social media team is larger, way more robust, just because you have to handle the volume. And it's much harder for like one troll to hijack everything.
That's true.
So that helps. So, other people jump in, other people police things. That's really great. And also, the community will always surprise you in terms of what they send in. The user submissions in terms of photos and comments that have just been amazing. And and I'm sure Jean knows this. No matter where you are, your audience always has like way sharper eyes than you do, and they will spot all the issues, all the problems, raise the right questions, and that is magnified 1,000 times in a large market. So definitely you will rely on your community that way.
In terms of social media and news, I don't believe that the market here in Hawaii has really matured in a sense. I have like about 5,000 friends on Facebook, so I think that my network on Facebook is actually a pretty good snapshot of how Hawaii uses social media.
Sure.
And I see a lot of what people share come from mainland outlets. The most viral things that you see locally are road rage clips or like angry Maui man being racist or whatever. So it's all very negative, like rubbernecking type of content that's being shared. But you see like BuzzFeed, like Asians, like Americans eating Asian food or something like that.
Right.
Or Huffington Post Hawaii, the Civil Beat also runs that here in Hawaii. So we try to produce some viral content here. But you don't really see a lot of that, a lot of quality viral content being produced out of Hawaii.
Okay.
I don't feel it's really matured a lot.
Okay, great. So we have to do a brief commercial break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on the ThinkTech Digital Series. The show is every Wednesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and I want you to watch this show because I think that when we talk with artists on the show about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, why they do it, I believe that it resonates within each of us, and we find something inside of ourselves that brings us closer to all of humanity. That's what arts are there to do, and that's what I'm here to do on this show. That's Center Stage. It's on every Wednesday from 2 to 3 o'clock. I hope to see you there.
Welcome to New Media, The Bleeding Edge here on ThinkTech. I'm here with my co-hosts Ing and our guest, Jean Park. Okay. All right, so getting back to what you were, Jean was expounding on sort of the differences between the social media spheres and discussions he sees around news in, for example, New York versus Hawaii. And I think we're kind of getting into an interesting place there. So you spoke to kind of the maturity of the market and of what goes viral, what kind of memes really get out there and the discussions around them. And you said that you thought that you see more of the rubbernecking sort of, kind of negative stuff in Hawaii still more than you would in some of these other markets.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Do you also see that some of the things that you observe on social media in, for example, Japan and China, where there's a greater concern with anonymity and less of an inclination to kind of, wear everything on your sleeve the way that you sometimes see on the mainland? Do you think that that permeates a bit into the Hawaii social media sphere?
That's an interesting take. I feel like, yeah, probably. I mean, the media market here, I mean, the Star Advertiser is still a very successful newspaper. And so, we have an older generation who still relies on traditional print media. Midweek is still very successful as well. Everyone still buys it for the coupons. You'll probably start to see that change as the generations go on. That everyone always says that Hawaii is always 2 to 3 years behind the mainland. That seems to be holding true relatively in terms of the social media maturation of how people use it here.
Do you also think that, I mean, I grew up in Singapore, which is kind of like Oahu, about the same size and, small number of people. And it's really, 3 degrees of separation. Everybody knows everybody, just like here.
Yeah.
And so on social media, you kind of have to be careful because really everybody knows everybody, and, somebody could just read it, and that could really be, your auntie who's like living down the road.
Yeah. Right.
Do you think there's that sort of factor here, and people a bit more sort of restrained?
Yeah, I feel like it would be. I think this is a really small island, and you really do have to watch what you say. So the way of doing business here in Hawaii has not changed in the past 40 years or 50 years in terms of like don't talk stink about anybody. So I think that continues to this day. Social media gives people a platform to be able to break out. So I think you're going to have some of that every once in a while, especially folks who might come from here from the mainland and are more used to that kind of style of doing business. But I feel like local will stay local, and I think a lot of that will play into that.
Sure. So I guess changing direction for a little bit, you mentioned earlier about scheduling tweets and using, it sounds like you're using some tools to do this.
Yeah.
TweetDeck, is it kind of the usual sorts of tools you see? Do you have any new tools you're using that you're finding useful? Or
I just use a tried and true TweetDeck. I use Facebook's native scheduling to schedule things. Okay. Actually, this morning it had a glitch. Every once in a while it has glitches, but otherwise it's good. And I found that using the native tools actually helps a lot.
Okay.
So.
Right, because they're not having to track with
exactly
having platform risk of it breaking as they release updates.
Yeah.
And we've encountered those kinds of problems with third-party tools as well.
Yeah.
Do you also coordinate other Civil Beat staffers and their sort of social media releases?
I try to coordinate with the staff. They're very busy. We have a small staff of 6 reporters, so they're busy doing their own reporting. I would like to coordinate with them more in terms of social media projects, and I'm working on one right now to get them more engaged and to get them more excited to talk to the audience. A lot of them do that, but I want them to be a little bit more upfront about it. A lot of people refer to Civil Beat as like the place where Chad Blair works or the place where I work, and I want to change that. And I definitely want to change that, or the site that Pierre Mini, the eBay founder, runs, right?
Sure.
I want to be able to change that. I want to be like that's where Ali Wong is killing the education beat, or that's where Nick Ruby broke the story about the police misconduct. I want to change the conversation, and hopefully I can do that.
That's great, and kind of grow the brand equity.
Exactly.
So it's known for that kind of great investigative journalism that is already and has been happening.
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of being known for loudmouths like myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Great. So if I'm a journalism student and I want your job, I want to be a person that manages a community at Civil Beat or at one of the other news organizations here on the mainland. What should I do? How do I prepare to have your kind of job?
You have to be able to really know how to communicate with people online. It's a really key skill, and it's one that I kind of developed really early on since high school. When I was a moderator for a Java-based chat room on the island of Guam, and I was 16 years old, and so everybody kind of looked to me as a moderator, and I would be banning people and telling people to calm down or stop spreading gossip or whatever. So I kind of took that training that it's kind of like a second language to be able to communicate online. And do that. I think a lot of younger folks already do that anyways. You know, that everyone's on social media. A lot of people are on Snapchat, so I'm still trying to figure out how to use that.
I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah,
actually,
okay.
What you guys are doing or looking at with Snapchat
Yeah.
and WhatsApp
Yeah.
or Vine, you know, some of these
Yeah.
other ways that people are sharing
Yeah.
sharing stories and capturing stories.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, these are digital natives, so I think they already do that. One thing that I think a lot of people should be mindful of is to be able to keep track of numbers. You know, one of the most beautiful things about social media is that it gives companies, like news organizations, the ability to be able to track what people care about, what people are talking about, and bring that information back to the staff and relay that. And you know, it might be able to inform, not dictate, but at least inform their coverage to see what they're doing right, what's connecting, or what they, you know, what kind of angles we could approach certain stories.
Okay.
So I think that's really a key part. I think once they're able to be able to analyze that data and communicate it effectively into good strategy, I think that they're totally set and they can work anywhere they want.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. And this is a question, again, I think that it would be useful to get answers from both of you. Do you know how, so at Civil Beat, you are the social news desk, you're a one-man operation there.
I am the one guy, yeah.
Do you know how it looks at, for example, the New York Times or the Huffington Post? In terms of how, do they have a group attached to each news desk, or how is it normally structured at the larger news organizations?
They have a huge, bigger staff. Even at the Star Advertiser, I know that it's not just one person doing everything. So some of it is automatically fed through the social media. Some of it is tailored. Okay. But you know that's split up between like the online production team and the marketing team. So I imagine I know for a fact that the other news organizations have much bigger staff. You know, shifts throughout the day. Hand tailoring all these tweets and Facebook posts.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, most organizations realize that the less robotic you sound on social media, the better.
Sure.
And so, you know, ultimately, a human element takes time, it takes labor, and so, you know, for example, at the Times, you know, you have a small core team in terms of social media. They are sort of like the crack troops, and you know, any huge sort of breaking news, etc. They're the ones who are unleashed on, you know, like, you know, a hurricane or you know, the Ferguson riots or that sort of stuff, and they're completely unleashed on a day-to-day basis. You know, each desk, they are very active in their own, you know, social media presence. I mean, the reporters naturally, and also, you know, each desk has several sort of digital producers that you know, are active on social media as well. So, you know, through a combination of those, they try and get it covered. You know, Jean's absolutely right. I mean, you know, you know, we always know that news is a 24/7 operation, and so it's just a natural extension to then regard, you know, social media as a 24/7 operation. And you know, so yes, there are shifts, and you know, it's monitored constantly.
Okay, no, that's great. Can you think of, it doesn't have to be local, it can be national or global, some examples of news organizations, traditional news organizations that are doing a really good job in incorporating social media and kind of meshing those together, and also counter examples, if you have them, of social media epic fails on the news side of things?
Gosh. Trying to think. Well, I mean, you know, I have a great admiration for BuzzFeed in terms of how they've been able to really capitalize on the whole native advertising, the native content form, in terms of just presenting content that is beneficial for a certain client and disguising it as a viral listicle or video, and just it being spread everywhere. You know, BuzzFeed was ahead of the game in terms of implementing native videos into Facebook, recognizing already that native videos on Facebook does a lot better than any other content.
Sure.
So they're posting original content on Facebook. So I mean, right now Huffington Post is still #1, I think, in terms of the social market share. But BuzzFeed has made tremendous headway. It is currently #2, if not #1.
Okay.
And you know, a lot of people don't think of them as a news organization, but they have investigative news reporters there. Yeah, there was a case of plagiarism that they had a couple months ago. One of their main editors had about 50 or so articles that was plagiarized. So they fired him immediately on the spot. So there's they're taking accountability very seriously.
Okay.
So a lot of people would discount BuzzFeed, but they're incredibly smart.
What do you think of the research that Chartbeat did to basically, they have reams of data from all the major newsrooms, and they've done the number crunching, and they found that there is, within the first minute or so, when people share, right, when people, first couple of seconds actually, when people share content, they rarely ever have read it.
Yeah. I believe that's 15 seconds. I think that Chartbeat actually had. So I know exactly the study you're talking about. That study is really indicative of a larger conversation happening in the news industry right now as to how they're actually analyzing their data sets. It's always been a numbers game, and that's always been traditional in terms of the traditional advertising getting eyeballs there. But I mean, you ask our viewers out there, how many times do they actually watch an ad online? How many times do they actually pay attention to the longs ad at the store advertiser, for example? Right. And you probably won't get a lot of good responses. So that piece was really enlightening, and I really hope it keeps going traction to kind of encourage news organizations to produce higher quality content that will keep people there. That will keep people there for at least longer than a minute. I think 2 minutes is a good time period where they actually read the article. And I think a lot of that has to do with making sure that you have high quality content that delivers on the expectations that your headline or your clickbait had for. Right. So even this morning when we posted that story about Inoue and the allegations of sexual harassment against Senator Gillibrand, I put the headline that he had said that he was alleged to have said certain things. But it came from an unnamed source in the New York Times, and one of our readers got upset, that we wasted our time. But it came from the New York Times, so ultimately it's the New York Times' fault. But I mean, like that right there, like that kind of betrayal of readership. I think we just need to do better in terms of delivering high quality content. Okay. Keep them there, high quality videos. I read an interesting blog post recently about how a lot of social marketers always talk about, oh, you need to keep your videos short because the new generation's attention spans are just like this, right? But then you look on YouTube and you look at the biggest name brands and the biggest YouTube channels, and you look at their highest YouTube counts. They have 30 million views for videos that are 17 minutes long that are only part 1 of a part 17 series. Right. So millennials do have a lot of time, and they do want to they want to consume a lot of high quality content. So as long as it's engaging, as long as it's something that they want, then they'll stay on it.
Then they'll stay on it.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to come back to that point. We do have another short break.
Aloha, welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. My name is Josh Green. I'm the host of a program called Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm a physician. I work in the emergency department on the Big Island. I also serve in the state senate, which, please don't hold that against me, doesn't detract from my television program. We speak about all the big healthcare issues in the state. We get together on Tuesdays from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we try to talk about the most important issues in healthcare. This is a terrific venue for people to learn about healthcare. There are many programs on this station. We broadcast it later, not just on the internet, but also on OC16. Thanks for joining us. Please be informed healthcare consumers.
Hello, welcome back to New Media, The Bleeding Edge here on ThinkTech. I'm here with my co-hosts Ing and our guest Jeannie Park. We were just talking about the quality of content and the general belief that everything has to be 30-second MTV clips, and the fact that that's not really the case. That some of the most watched videos actually have some length to them, but they have substance, so people are willing to spend some time with them.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier about credibility, anonymous sources, and I know you weren't speaking specifically about from social media, but when you're talking about the use of social media to discover news, which you're starting to see, you see now that CNN, BBC, they quote tweets. How do you address the issue of credibility and reliability when you're seeing things surface through social channels?
I think social media gives a very good ability for reporters to kind of like lay out a roadmap of transparency and accountability. You know, if you tweet somebody back and saying you're asking for their contact info, people will see that you're actually being accountable to your work. So if you do see a tweet that sounds amazing or whatnot, I think journalists can never forget their principal responsibilities of following up and verifying that information. So they should have to contact that person and verify information. Op-ed letters, editors of op-ed pages, they always they get all these letters, and but they require a phone number to be able to call back and say, can you verify that you are the person who sent this letter to us? So it's kind of the same thing with social media, except that it's an open process, and people can see that. So if you do it the right way, then that's when people will be able to trust you. Andrew Carvin, who was the digital mastermind at NPR, and now is with PR Media's First Look Media.
Right.
He built this tremendous amount of capital and goodwill by being kind of like the voice of the Arab Spring back in the 2011, 2010, or whatnot. I'm forgetting the years now. But
that's right.
Yeah, but he was in his office in New York, but he was communicating with so many ground people, social media folks, verifying and re-verifying information, and that's how information of the Arab Spring was able to spread through the Western world. But because he was able to be an accountable conduit for all that information.
That's great. Do you actively use social channels to look for? Is it part of the investigative journalism that you do?
Yeah. A lot of times we try to reach out to people. If I do see a Facebook post or a tweet, I try to reach out to them. We do need to be better at using data that's on social to be able to tell better stories. That's something a lot of people in Hawaii struggle with right now, in terms of the resources that we are able to do, and the everyday grind of covering breaking news and everything.
Of course.
But in terms of social media, I use it a lot to find sources, to crowdsource and get sources. One of our reporters got a lot of good stories. I think two front page stories out of using Reddit. The Reddit community is very engaged, and they're very intelligent people. They also don't like to be only used as a source, but every once in a while, they really like to help out. So I think going back to your point about how Hawaii is a small community. I mean, I think there's a lot of obligation that we have towards each other to be able to help each other out with information. So I think there's some room to be able to build off of that and use that as an advantage as opposed to disadvantage.
Would you say that right now it's being used more to add resolution and gauge response to something that breaks through some other source, or where a significant amount of news is starting to actually break through a social channel?
I don't think a lot of them is breaking through social channels. Governor Abercrombie actually famously announced that he was running for governor on Twitter. Right. So I was at the Star Advertiser when that happened. So for a lot of political reporters there, that was kind of the breaking point for them, where they realized that, okay, I guess I have to sign up for this Twitter thing because I gotta pay attention, right? So that's starting to happen. But not too much of it is happening. That's why it kind of goes back to the immaturity of the social media market here, where not a lot of companies or brands or politicians are really leveraging it to be able to get that word out, and not to a widespread effect. So the only news stories that we really see coming out of social media are viral videos of ladies getting mad on the road, or the sign of Hawaiian rental that went viral after the police prostitution scandal.
Yes.
Where they said, don't worry, HPD, you can rent our hose anytime.
Yes.
Which was hilarious, and Hawaii News now posted a photo, and that went viral like crazy, and that turned into a news story. But in terms of more serious news stories, we have yet to see that really emerge, I think.
Speaking about the Hawaii market, or speaking, you're saying?
The Hawaii market.
Okay.
The Hawaii market specifically.
Wouldn't you say that for issues that have a lot of resonance in Hawaii, like the GMO issue, or recently there was that video of an environmental activist diving and recording somebody harvesting reef fish and then got her mask ripped off. These are issues with wider resonance, and doesn't that sort of grow naturally out of Hawaii because we are at the crux of these issues?
Yeah, I think the GMO issue has really taken a spotlight in a national sense. in terms of how loud it is. You know, it's very loud and very active here. Even for Civilbeat, you know, our busiest stories are always GMO stories. In terms of like they would easily reach hundreds of comments, but mostly just people bickering at each other. And I kind of don't like that. As much as I like the amount of comments that it gets, I would rather it be higher quality arguments.
Sure.
So I do try to make more of an effort to try to go in and to try to keep people on track of what people are talking about. But one thing about social media is that you always have to question who's behind that message, you know, especially with the GMO, pro-GMO or anti-GMO, no matter what you are, you know, there's always a slant, and you can't take that at face value. So you should be able to look at that and look at it as a trend, but not really just take that as a news story that's coming out of one source. You know, one thing social media has done is taken the middleman out of, you know, the news and journalists. So people are just using social media as news.
Right.
So that creates an interesting phenomenon that is not really all that great. So
yeah, you see often, we've noticed in building tools for this, that you can see incredible velocities of discussion around something that doesn't come from a very credible source, which is an interesting phenomenon, how these echo chambers form very quickly. And so I guess it goes back to what you were saying, the old rules still apply. You have to have a way of contacting the person and get a response from them. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know at the New York Times and Business Week, some of the places that you used to work, is there a significant amount of time that is spent mining social media for breaking news there? Or is it, as Gene was saying here, more social media is used to add resolution around it? Oh, I saw that event that this person reported, and I had this little bit of extra information to add about it, or gauging response. Or do you see a lot of news actually breaking on social media that they're finding?
Well, I think reporters and news organizations, certainly in the ones that I've worked in, work the social media from every single angle. So not only, you know, after a story has broken, getting details and resolution, etc., but certainly, you know, as Jean mentioned, you know, sourcing stories, you know, having discussions with users and having that sort of lead into, you know, further investigation. You know, even crowdsourcing the analysis of documents. When the WikiLeaks document dump happened, the Times basically, you know, put it online and said, everybody go at it. And that was incredibly useful in terms of, you know, analyzing the documents. So yeah, you know, I think news organizations try and get at this from every single angle. It's just so rich that, you know, they can explore.
I see. Yeah, you know, it's interesting to look at whether or not these newer, more agile companies like BuzzFeed are really going to dominate as social plays a bigger role, or whether you're going to see some of the bigger guys successfully transition into a smooth integration with social sources for breaking news and for adding color to news that breaks elsewhere. Do you guys have any feeling on whether or not you think it's going to be mostly new news organizations coming in and replacing, you know, the giants that are there? Or do you think that some of them are successfully transitioning?
Oh gosh, well, I read a report this morning in the Financial Times about how for every U.S. journalist in America, kind of redundant, for every U.S. journalist that there are 4.6 PR professionals working in America today. And it kind of talked about all these big corporations like Target or GE creating their own news stories. They have their own news sites in Richmond, California, which is a town of only 100,000. Chevron in Richmond has a website there and has become the news site for that community, but it's owned by Chevron. And so there's a lot of pro-Chevron stories that go in there. So I mean, going back to my point about social media getting rid of the middleman, these corporations are no longer seeing the value of reaching out to reporters and trying to pitch a story to them. Right now, they're just creating their own news organizations, and they are hiring former journalists to do this, to be able to create this content and kind of steer the conversation into their favor. So it's very troubling, and it's a trend that has not stopped. You know, I feel like it's gotten faster than even the decline of newspapers.
Would you say that as more and more of these companies do this, and there is sort of news with an agenda
Mhm.
on social media, then people are going to get more and more sophisticated about being aware of what that agenda is and parsing that agenda and or at least valuing sort of more objective news sources like Civil Beat, for example.
Gosh, I hope so. I mean, it really falls on the responsibility of a journalist to be able to parse this data, the information that's being peddled out by these companies. But what this article showed and what I see is that these companies will put out these high quality videos of the personal story behind the CEO, and then they'll just kind of repackage it and then put it out there. I worked in PR in Hawaii for about a year, and just that 1 year experience alone made me truly realize exactly how much footwork PR professionals do for news organizations. I mean, they do so much for the news story, and it just makes me gain more respect for what PR people do, and kind of like worry about the journalism future, because journalists have to feed this 24-hour beast, and they're being overworked, so they might have to rely on these things. I'm hopeful that the readership will be able to parse the PR versus the news, but I still don't really see that happening right now. The Facebook algorithm kind of encourages this echo chamber of news feeds of people that just keep agreeing with you over and over again, and you're just gonna hit share because you think Kanye is the worst person of all time, even though it was just a satire story,
Mm-hmm.
or you might think that GMOs are horrible or the greatest thing of all time because you believe it, and you just don't think about it, and it continues to spread virally. So it actually troubles me.
Do you think that changes to the platforms will help with that? If Twitter
Absolutely.
started to more aggressively give people tools to determine if something was coming from an accredited investigative journalist versus a mouthpiece for the company, those sorts of things?
Yeah, I would love to see that, and also for the algorithm to change too. I mean,
The EdgeRank algorithm.
The EdgeRank algorithm too. A highly level Facebook employee went on a rant a couple months ago about how the news organizations are just throwing out fluff, and pointed to a Vox story, which is a new media outlet that started by Ezra Klein,
Mhm.
and it was talking about some kind of food or whatever, and he was railing about news organizations resorting to this, and in turn, all the news companies in like New York Times or Washington Post or even Vox, Ezra Klein himself responded saying, "You're the problem. Facebook is the problem." So it's just this blame game going back and forth, and no one's. It just feels like, I know Facebook has been trying to reach out more, and that's why they're making changes to EdgeRank to capitalize on trending stories or news organizations. So hopefully it'll start moving more towards that.
But going back to that spark of hope, that Chartbeat research that showed,
Yeah.
well, people actually do value quality content.
Mhm.
Do you think there will be a differentiation in the market ultimately, because people are just, sometimes exhausted by this crazy fire hose of stuff that comes at you,
Yeah.
of very questionable quality.
Yeah.
And they would like to be able to depend on somebody they trust.
Yeah, I think it's just again, like, I think the algorithm needs to prioritize more trustworthy news organizations. I think if Facebook wants to position itself as the newspaper of tomorrow, which is an ironic thing, considering that a lot of the EdgeRank that you see on your news feed is from news from yesterday.
Yes.
So it truly is becoming the newspaper of today.
Right.
I think that these tech companies are taking a responsibility, but I mean, I think the overall question is, do news companies really want to relinquish that responsibility to these tech companies?
Right.
And what can news organizations do? That's a question that I'm not qualified to answer, and I'm not sure anyone really is. So. Yeah.
We'll maybe try to solve that in the next show in 2 weeks here. I just wanted, we need to wrap up here. I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And we hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks. Thanks for bearing with us through this first show here. Again, my name is Daniel Luke. This is my co-host Ing, and our guest Gene Park. See you in 2 weeks.